Welcome to another episode of the Business Everyday Show. I'm Jonathan Wilms, and today in the studio, we have another one of my friends, but there's a little bit of a twist. This is a person who has a really cool passion, and not just a cool passion, but he is a pro. So my friend Jeff, thank you for coming into the studio today. Just introduce yourself. Who are you, and what do you do, my friend?
Well, my name is Jeff Loop. I raced professional motocross and supercross.
Oh my goodness. Now, for not all of my listening audience will know exactly what that means. I mean, I think we all understand that that's motorcycle of some form, but specifically, what are the nuances in motocross and supercross?
So motocross is, it's dirt bikes.
Okay.
We're motorcycles that race in the dirt. We do the jumps. And supercross is more refined. It's inside the stadiums, which is in like the Titan Stadium, Angel Stadium in California.
Gotcha.
And much shorter lap times so more people can see what we're doing, and it's all inside a stadium.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask the big question, like, where did this get started and how'd you get into this? And we're going to see where this conversation goes, because I know you have a long history in this professional field, and I want to know, where did it all begin? How'd you get in to motorcycle riding?
So my dad grew up racing dirt bikes.
Okay.
And when I was really young, I used to go watch him race. And at 4 years old, I got my first motorcycle. PW50, jumped on the thing, ran it into a brick wall, and I've been hooked ever since.
At 4 years old, man, I don't even think I was a delayed walker. So even by 4, I don't know that, like, was it a manual? Like you had to shift and everything? Or I don't know anything about the series of bikes. So
no, when you start on a PW50, there's no shifting. So
okay.
There's no gears.
Hit the accelerator and rev it until it stops.
And you go until the bike can't go any faster. Yeah.
Or you hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is not just something that you've passionate about. This is a family passion that has been around for a long time.
Yeah. My dad grew up racing. His dad didn't get him into it. He actually got into it through some friends. And super cool, back when he was young, I wish it was around while I was young. He raced high school motocross. He was on the high school motocross team.
Okay.
And traveled all over California, and he was the man to beat in Southern California on a dirt bike in high school motocrossing.
So Team Loop has been top dog for a long time.
Yeah, he was pretty cool to go back and look at the results and see the stuff that he did.
Dude, that's awesome. So at 4 years old, you get on your first motorcycle and you're like, no, this is for me. And then what is that progression? Is that a progression of just you're riding out with your dad, or you going to summer camps, or is there a training process? Is there a certification process? Because I mean, like, you can't even legally drive until you're 15, 16, and you're out there on motorcycles at 4 years old.
Yeah, it really started. He would take me just out riding around in the hills. There was all kinds of places we could go ride. And for about a year, that's what I did. Just rode the PW50 out in open land, some trails. And he taught me how to use the gas, how to hit the brakes. And really, you either want it or you don't.
Right.
On a motorcycle, you're going to crash. You're going to crash early. And if it hurts and you don't want to get hurt, you'll stop. And it didn't bother me, and all I wanted to do was go faster. So within a year, I was actually racing competitively, starting at 5 years old. And you line up with 5, 10, 15 other kids that are 5 years old, and we were racing each other at 5 years old.
So there's competitive races for that age bracket all the way up.
Yeah, you can start racing. They have a 4 to 6 Pee-wee class, and that's 4 is about the youngest you'll see kids racing. And as you progress, you eventually get out of age brackets, and you'll start getting into skill level brackets, novice, intermediate, pro. And then as you get older, they let you get back into age brackets.
They'd be a little kind and like, oh, all right, we're going to slow it down. How long do age brackets go to? Like, is there a 70s and 80s and 90s? And
there is certain places that you can race. They have what's called over the hill gang
over the
races.
hill.
Yeah. And
That's so kind.
those that will go 70 plus, 80 plus. I don't know if
No.
I've seen a 90 plus, but I know I've watched 80-plus-year-old guys racing each other.
That's incredible. And that's got to be an adrenaline thrill just to say, like, please don't fall. Don't fall.
Yeah,
Don't fall. But I mean, these are professional athletes, so
yeah,
it's just a different game.
yeah. Some people never grow out of not going over their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll see people who are too old to be getting hurt at the level that they are, but man, they just can't shut it down. It's hard.
Do you have it under control?
I like to tell myself I do.
Okay.
So I've gotten to the point where I'm going to do everything I can to win the race. But if it gets to the point where I don't have it, I will back it down. If I got one lap left and there's somebody right on me, I'm gonna hang it out there. I'm gonna see if I can beat him. But say there's 10 minutes left of the race, I'm already dragging and he's all over me. I'll let him go because I will end up getting hurt 10 minutes if I'm tired and I'm pushing over the limit. So there's a yes, I do know when to back it down, but not all the time.
So from a young age, starting off at 4, 5, 6 is like, when did you experience your first major injury that could have either thrust you into hey, I'm going to continue to do this and I'm going to put in the grit and get through. This isn't going to bring me down. Or it could have gone the other way where you just like, nah, cost is too high.
My first big injury I broke my arm, my humerus at 5 years old. And
not long after.
No, just over a year, and we were out riding. At this point, I had my own track. My dad had built a track in our backyard.
Whoa,
and it
cool.
was a decent sized track, at least in my mind back then. It was a decent sized track,
right?
And it started raining, and we wanted to go ride in the mud, and I fell over, and my sister was behind me, and she ran my arm over, and it snapped it, not fully in half, but it was a good break to it.
Woo! So you get mended up, and does that just exhilarate you more? Like, oh, I gotta just be better and skill, or do you like think about it for a moment and say like, I don't know about this?
There was no thinking.
Okay.
There never has been. As soon as it was broken and the cast was on, it was how long does this cast have to stay on until I can go ride again? I say in order to make it in this sport, there's got to be some screws loose to be able to go through some of the injuries.
Some screws in, some screws out.
Yeah, some screws. Yeah, some screws loose in the head, and some screws loose in the ankle. In order to shut it down with all the injuries that we've been through, there's not very many people that can do it.
Now I know it sounds fairly dangerous in regards to like injuries always on the table, but are people getting like permanently injured, killed in this sport?
Yes.
Okay. That's sobering.
Yeah, it's
you don't hear about a lot of guys that die in golf or
right.
There are certain sports out there where you're just like, yeah, it's 50-50.
Yeah, I mean our lives are on the line out there when we're out there riding. The first time I experienced that I was about 9. And there was a kid who was 11, and he was fast. He was beating guys that made it to the very top of the sport, and he was doing it on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. And at 11 years old, he had a crash right in the hills. He wasn't even racing, and came over a hill, and there was another guy on the other side, and they hit, and it took his life. So,
oh my gosh,
that was the first experience I had with it. I was 9. And it was hard to see someone that I looked up to have that happen to him.
Mm-hmm. But not a deterrent, just to check and be like, okay, but
yeah,
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, I think that scared my parents more to the point where my parents had never took me out to open trail ride is what you would call that, out just riding out in the hills. Mm-hmm. That's when they decided, okay, that this happened to him, not of his own doing. If I were to crash on a motocross track, it's going to be a mistake that I made or something like that. But this was, he had no idea there was someone coming. It was just over the top of a hill.
Right.
So it was blind.
So being out on open trails seems even more dangerous than competitive racing.
Yeah. And as it got bigger and bigger, and then sand rails and all kinds of stuff started entering that kind of trail out in the hills, you could come over and there'd be a sand rail there or one of these big side-by-sides.
And you're going to lose.
Yeah, you're going to lose. So from that point on, where I used to go ride starting at 4 or 5 years old,
Mm-hmm.
at 9 years old, we never went back. My parents
Okay.
said, okay, we're not doing that. And I agreed with them, obviously,
Yeah.
with what had happened. I think that was kind of our, okay, this is not safe. We're going to put this out and try not to look at it, because I did not want to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was there any point that your parents did say, like, okay, Jeff, like you've gone really far, but we're getting a little crazy now. Like, it's time to throttle it back.
So at same year, 9 years old, was my first like really big injury, and I broke my femur.
Ooh.
And your adrenaline is so high that you don't feel things right away. So the first thing I tried to do was get back to my motorcycle, and as I took a step, it compounded, and it was about 6 inches out of my leg.
Oh.
So I laid back down. Yeah. Yeah, and my mom was there to watch it. And yeah. So that is the one injury that my mom made us sell everything. The motorcycles were sold, the trailer was sold.
Wow, so you did get out of the game.
I had a motorcycle before I was healed up.
Okay.
I was out of the game, so 4 months later I was back on a motorcycle from that.
Wow.
And it was pretty traumatic. With it being a compound fracture, they actually flew a specialist in from New York, and I was in California at the time, to perform the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They had college students,
Mm-hmm.
medical students that were brought in to watch the surgery. And
You were a study.
yes, I was. And what they did was they put 4 pins in my femur with an external fixator, because they couldn't do the typical rod
Right.
in the femur because of the type of break that it was. And so I had this big giant external rod on the outside of my leg with 4 pins sticking out of it. And to wake up to that, I fell asleep long before the surgery happened. So
Right.
to wake up to that, I about jumped off the bed.
Oh my gosh, you got this exoskeleton structure on you, and you're like, what the heck is this?
Yeah. And I was in the hospital for about 3 days, and my dad and I were watching motorcycle movies in the hospital.
Uh-huh.
So
Do you have a favorite motorcycle movie?
oh man, they were so good back in the early 90s. There was all of there was Terra Firma 1, 2, and 3. I didn't even know what Terra Firma meant when I was 9 years old, but it's just dirt. So the Terra Firma movies were really good. Fox had really good movies. Man, I can't remember the exact one we were watching in the hospital, but it was probably one of those Terra Firma movies.
That's awesome. So you went through just we're talking about one event, 9 years old, very traumatic, compound break. And did the doctor say, hey, like, dude, like, lay off the bike? Like, you're going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life if you do this again.
Yeah, it was a constant battle with the doctors from a young age. They always would you could tell they didn't approve of the motocross. They'd see all kinds of broken bones and
From
stuff.
your participation or from your parents allowing?
I think both.
Okay.
They could probably talk to that a lot more than I could, but they would talk to my parents in front of me and try to convince them not to let me back on the motorcycle.
Sure.
And like I said, my mom had decided at one point that I wasn't going to, and it went to the point of she made me see a therapist and have sessions with this therapist, because she was convinced that there's no kid that could go through that and want to ride a dirt bike again.
Whoa.
So she thought that I wanted to ride to please my dad.
Okay.
She made me go through all of these sessions, and at the end of it, the therapist had told my mom, like, I think that he really just loves it and he wants to ride.
He just wants to ride. He just wants to go fast and be out there.
Yeah. And her story that she's told me, I was 9 years old, so most of my memory of it is stories. And what she had told me is that after the therapist told her that she prayed a lot, and that God had told her that boys are different. And
yes.
And that
I come from a family of 4 boys, and I think my mother could say the same. It's like,
yeah.
boys just be different.
Yeah. Boys are different, and God told her that he was going to take care of me.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So 4 months later, I was back on a dirt bike.
Do any of your other siblings ride at all to this day? And do they ride with the same vigor and passion as you?
My brother was always on and off. He got a dirt bike when he was 4. He rode for a bit. He didn't want to ride anymore. He'd go and he did karate at one point. He did football at one point. He did basketball. He's done so many other things because he just wasn't as passionate about it.
Mm.
And about 14 years old, he decided he wanted to go further into motocross. And at that point, he was like, I didn't like watching him ride because I'm like, dude, you've been riding for this long. Like, you got to go faster than that. Like, that was my mentality. Right. It was frustrating to watch, but he just didn't want to get hurt. And at 14, it clicked, and he went from like beginner in the beginner class and just smoked everybody at this local California series. So they moved him up. He moved to the novice class. Again, he was just beating everybody. He went from probably beginner to pro within a 2-year period. Okay. From 14 to 16, 17 years old.
Can you shed some light on that progression specifically? Because I have a baseball background, and so when I think of like Pee Wee, Mustang, and then you got high school, and then varsity, and then you get minor league, pro league. Pro to me is what it means something to me that I don't know that it means the same in motocross, and I just want to be clear for even myself and the listeners is like, can you tell me what that progression is and what that actually means? Because it sounds like being pro at 14 sounds like that's insane. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, cool, but what?
Yeah, it's not. So there's levels of professional racing.
Okay.
And I turned pro at 17 years old, and at that point, you would consider it a local pro.
Okay.
So if I were to go race any race in California or even go out of state, I was going to race the pro class. But this wasn't televised. This wasn't the top of the sport. It was
right.
Best way of describing it, what we would call it is, he's local pro.
Local pro.
After that, you get to a national level.
Okay.
There's a huge national out in Tennessee every year, and if you're racing the pro class there, you are fast. You are in the top 42 professional, but not like major league professional. So it's kind of like an amateur professional, semi-pro type class.
Okay.
And if you're at this race in Tennessee in this professional class, the next step you make from there is you are what's considered AMA pro. AMA is American Motorcyclist Association.
Okay. To
become AMA pro, get what's called a pro card, you have to do so well at many regional races and get enough points. There's a point system. You have to make 100 points within a 1-year period. After the 1 year is up, you start losing the points that you started getting in the beginning of the year. So if you can't go fast enough to make these points in 1 year, you cannot get your AMA pro card.
Wow. So it's just a constant thing. It's not just a status that you can maintain. It's you got to be out there all the time racing and getting your points.
Yeah, once you get your points and you make it into to get your pro card, as long as you're competing regularly, your pro card never goes away unless they deem you like hazardous on the track. If you're not out there getting around at about the same speed, they can revoke your pro card. But after 2 years, if you don't compete for 2 years with your pro card, it is gone, and you'll have to go through the whole steps again of getting it.
Okay. All right, that makes things a whole lot more clear. Where do you fall in that stack, just so I have that all condensed into one thing?
I would consider myself a national pro rider.
Okay.
If I go to a local race and race the pro class, I'm going to win. It's not fair. And I do it every once in a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
you got to keep some guys humble.
Yeah. It's fun, especially when my kids were starting to get into racing, and I would line up and race the pros at the local race, and people were just get blown away.
Right.
So I would consider myself as a nationally level pro rider. I do race the national in the pro class, and then there's vet pro. So what they consider a vet rider is 30 years and older. You're now a veteran old guy at 30 years old.
Because I was following you on your Loretta journey this last couple of weeks, and I was seeing vet all over. I was
Yeah.
like, what is that exactly?
Yeah.
And okay, that makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah. So you are an old man of the sport of motocross. So at that point, that's when you get back into the age bracket. And there's 30 and older, 40 and older, 50 and older pro classes. That is where I am really nationally ranked. Last year, I was nationally ranked second in 30 and older pro class. And this year, I ended up fourth at Loretta's, which is the national race. And
Golly, that's so fun.
yeah, so that's the top 42 30 and older pro riders in really not the world, but it's a national.
Sounds
but there's
pretty darn close.
There's guys that come from Australia, from Canada, from South America, from all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah, so
And I get to sit here with you.
yeah.
So this is incredible. Like I'm both learning. I mean, I've known you for almost 4 years now, or right at 4 years. And I know what you've done, and I know that you've been really good at what you've done, and I know you've been a pro rider and stuff like that, but it's also having perspective. That's really special. Like, I'm honored to sit with you, Mr. Loop.
Well, I'm honored you think I'm special enough to put on your podcast here.
That's so fun. So, would that make you eligible, or what level would make you eligible for like Olympic level? Because we just went through the Summer Olympics, and normally, I honestly didn't watch much of it, but normally there's been motorcycle, dirt bike racing, motocross. They've been included in years past. I don't remember if it was included this year. But is that the level that you're talking about?
So, if they were going to have motocross, supercross in the Olympics, they're going to get those top AMA professional guys.
Okay.
That if they come race against me, it's going to be like me racing against the local pros.
Gotcha.
They are their next level. Their conditioning is unmatched. I'm not going to be able to hang. I might be able to do 3-4 laps with them.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're doing 30-minute races, I cannot go that speed for that long. It takes a full-time commitment. It is your job to be in shape in order to handle this motorcycle for 30-35 minutes at a time.
Right. Now, I'm going to bring also a preconceived idea right here, and maybe somebody else in the audience can relate to this, but when I think pro, I just assume full-time. Is that what it means, or does it mean something different?
So, to be at the top of the sport, it is your full-time job.
Okay.
I am a part-time professional motocross racer.
Okay.
And a full-time electrician.
Wow. Like, to handle both, like, that's a huge commitment. I know you're gone a lot of weekends, and it requires a lot of traveling and a lot of double time with workouts and, like you said, conditioning and just being prepared for your races. And like, that's a lot of work to stay in the sport.
Yeah, it takes in order for me to be able to compete at the level that I do. The race that we had was in August.
Uh-huh.
It's the national event in August. I really started training full-time as much as I could for it in February.
Okay.
And starting in February, I worked full-time, anywhere from 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Yep.
And come home, I was working out 5 to 6 days a week.
Okay.
One of those days on a motorcycle. Riding, with the amount of riding that I have time to do, I have to get all my conditioning from off the bike.
Got it.
I was lifting weights 3 days a week, running 2 to 3 days a week, and riding a motorcycle 1 day a week.
Okay. Whoa. And is that pretty standard across the board? If at competing at your level, that there are more part-time pros than there are. This is just what they do. They go around to every single race that they can and compete.
I think that once you get into the 30 and older classes, 30 and older, 40 and older classes, you do get a handful of guys that can compete with a non-racing full-time job. There's not very many. Most of the guys who are competing in the 30 plus and 40 plus are involved in the industry in some way.
Okay.
They're not guys who race for a living. Most of them, they're out there. One of the guys I race against is a full-time test rider. So he's on a motorcycle 5-6 days a week testing for Honda.
Interesting.
So he still rides all the time. And
That's gotta help. Yeah.
and he rides with really fast guys, and he's constantly testing motorcycles for R&D.
Okay.
I actually know a few guys that I race with that are like that. Then I have guys that are involved with motorcycle magazines, so they're always out test riding for magazines, doing articles for magazines. Some guys are just in the industry as a rider rep for a goggle company or Alpine Star boot company.
Okay.
Most of them are in the industry in some way, which allows them to be at the track a lot more than I can.
So how did you deviate from that typical story or narrative to electrician?
So that started back at 13 years old.
Okay.
At 13 years old, I was racing nationally. I was very highly ranked nationally as a 13-year-old rider. Yamaha was giving me motorcycles, and I had sponsorship from gear companies, from tire companies, from...
Whoa. Okay.
So I'm now expected to go do well at these national races.
Right. You got contracts to fulfill.
Yeah. And in order, I was racing in Texas in March, in Nevada in April, in Oklahoma in July, Tennessee in August, Florida in November, that just constantly, and I was missing too much school.
Okay.
What's funny is the year before I dropped out, and I didn't drop out. I started homeschooling. The year before my parents allowed me to homeschool, I scored so high in the standardized testing that the school actually went to my parents and told them that it was their obligation to put me in a private school. So
Which is so smart.
So when
they're like, get him out of
public school, which is crazy to think of, but instead of doing that, they pulled me out and put me in an independent studies homeschool course.
Okay.
And which again is my parents allowing me to chase the dream that I had.
Right.
Is huge. Allowing me to go through these injuries, allowing me to have a school system tell you your son is extremely smart. You need to push him this way, but let me pursue what I wanted.
Right.
It is really cool.
And for them to be all in, participating in that, driving to meets and going here and going there and like caravanning. Like I've heard some of the background like stories of here and there throughout the years, and I'm like, whoa, this was a commitment.
Huge.
Of no small scale.
Huge commitment. So back to what you're asking about the electrical trade.
Yeah.
My dad was an electrician.
Okay.
And he had started his own company.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm going to let you do homeschooling, but you have to come to work with me 2 days a week.
Seems fair.
To learn a trade, to learn a backup plan, a plan B. So I agreed. I said, let's do it. And what it turned into was me and my dad building this company to the amount of work we had was crazy. And sometimes I had to work a little bit more, but I rode probably 3 to 4 days a week.
Okay.
Sometimes 5, 6, 7 days a week. But if a big job would come up, he would say, all right, we got to buckle down, get this job done. But it's also going to help pay for the racing.
Right.
So I didn't make a dime working for my dad. Physically, he didn't pay me.
Sure.
What
but
I
the
got
investment into your sport was probably huge.
Huge. Yeah. The amount of money that my parents had to spend on me was massive. And I could see that. And I didn't have a problem going to work with my dad to help support the passion that I had.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going through 2, 3, 4 motorcycles a year. If I didn't do good enough, they weren't free that next year. So we would have to buy them. And then the traveling. So the more free stuff you get, the more traveling you got to do. You got to drive a motorhome. You don't get to fly to these races. You got to get your motorcycle there.
You got to get all your gear there.
Yeah, all your gear, all your dirt bikes, all your parts. So my dad is missing work. My dad is paying gas, motorhome.
Right.
I can't even begin to imagine the millions of dollars they spent chasing my dream with me.
I really thought there you were going to say hundreds of thousands, but millions.
Yeah, easily over $1 million.
Wow.
I was full-time nationally ranked rider from 6 till 17 as an amateur. So that's
incredible.
11, 12 years of traveling the country, racing dirt bikes. So
yeah. So I want to take a quick tangent right here to just say, like, sponsorships. I'm so curious around sponsorships. It's like, how does a 10-year-old, 11, 12-year-old, how do you get sponsorships? And are you like literally going to this, the CEO's desk and knocking on monsters saying, "Hey, can you sponsor me? I can ride really fast." Or like, what does that whole process look like in your sport?
So it starts at a very young age. You can
Okay.
start getting sponsors at 5, 6 years old.
Uh-huh.
So it really grows a kid up really fast
Yeah.
to be involved with that. And then to start feeling the pressure of having sponsors. Like imagine 7, 8, 9 years old lining up with 40 other kids, knowing that if I don't do well, I'm not going to have sponsors next year. Like,
I'm not gonna have tires. I'm not gonna
yeah,
have gear. I'm not gonna have a
yeah.
motorcycle. Like mom and dad have to pay. I have to go to work. Like we have to do this.
It's such a crazy sport when you start to think about it. It's completely different than anything that you're used to. So the way that it works
That's
is
wild.
you build a resume starting at 5 years old. You keep track of all your racing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this database of all your results. And then the following year, normally about August, September, is when you want to start building and getting out your resume. And you get it out to support managers of these companies.
Okay.
And there's a hired person, so it's not the CEO that you're talking to unless it's a newer startup
Yeah.
company. But there's a support manager, and that's who you're sending your resumes to. And they're reading through all of these kids' resumes, deciding who do they think is good enough to get sponsorship. And man, to start learning that at 5, 6, 7 years old,
Uh-huh.
it matures you so fast. To then at 9 years old, first memory I really have of going up, I got like 5th place at a national in Oklahoma. And then they have a whole award ceremony and you get interviews and you need to speak about your sponsors.
Right.
And
You have a PR obligation.
yeah, PR obligation at 9 years old. And
You have to be like, I'm here with so and so tires to represent them, and it's good.
yeah, and you should go listen to the live stream or the live video that they had for the national race
Okay.
at Loretta Lynn's.
Yep.
After every single race, they interview first, second, and third.
Okay.
4 to 6 Pee Wee class, they interview first, second, and third. And these
Golly.
6-year-olds can interview. They are good at what they do. 7, 8, 9, 13 years old, they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They're up there. They're thanking their sponsors. They're giving them plugs. Man, the tires were hooking up so good out there. The FMF exhaust gave me the power for the whole shot. Like 13 years old, you have matured to that level.
Oh my gosh. Now, did you have your own agent rep team, or were your parents taking care of all the contracts and the legal and the making sure that it was in the best interest of Little Loop, and like they were doing it all? Or did you have a whole representation team like you would in a almost like an act or a up and coming actor kind of scenario?
So my parents took care of all of mine, and that was kind of a thing that separated me a little bit from the top.
Okay.
I feel like it could have. We didn't know what we were doing. No, my parents weren't involved with this type of stuff. My dad did high school motocross in Southern California.
Right.
That's where he made it. He was the top professional high school motocross racer. But on the national level, we were learning through me. So my parents built the resumes, got the resumes out. They were my agents.
Okay.
There were a few guys above me who at 9, 10 years old had agents out there dealing with contracts and getting them all
Golly.
kinds of support.
I mean, I played pretty competitive baseball. I did All-Stars. I did Nationals. I went to Cooperstown Dreams Park in New York and played with the 96 teams up there and stuff like that. And I was competing at 11 and 12 years old, and like they're agents. They're literal agents. And you're like, who do you represent? Well, I represent this kid, and we're, logging his stats and talking to this agency and, this company. And you're like, I just want some Legos. Like, I love baseball, but holy crap, this is something of a different class that I was not expecting.
Yeah, and you get that at the very top, probably a whole lot more in the amateurs than when I was coming up as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Things have definitely changed from when I was a kid growing up in the amateur ranks to what it is now. I think that the system, the way things were ran when I was younger, was a lot better.
Okay.
Better at finding real talent rather than somebody who had a bunch of money put behind them.
Mm.
And but now, yeah, these agents. I know one of the kids who's now just turned pro. He's like 18 years old. He had an agent from about 5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So this kid, he was fast. He won his first Loretta's championship at 5 years old, and it was on from there. But what they do now is they put so much money and so much support behind this one kid. There's
Yeah.
nobody else that can support their kid with that kind of money.
Right.
At 6, 7 years old,
You have to have a fortune coming in.
yeah, this kid is on the best bike with the best parts, worked on by the best engineers in the country, and now you got this 8 year old who wasn't as fast at 5, but his talent is there. He's a half a second a lap slower on a bike that they built out of their trailer the weekend
Mm-hmm.
before because it broke down.
Right.
And I feel like they're really losing out on real talent because
Grit.
they
people.
just sell out at 5, 6, 7 years old to these kids that are real fast. And it's, you can see it's different at the top once they turn pro. When kids my age turn pro,
Mm-hmm.
we won.
Hmm.
Right
That
off.
was just that's just standard across the board.
You were coming out of Loretta's as a professional racer. If you won Loretta's, you could go the next weekend to an AMA professional race, and you're going to be in the top 5.
Okay.
Now these kids are turning pro, and they're struggling to be inside the top 20, 25.
They look flashy, but they're just not as fast.
Right, because now this extra boost of my bike is better. I have full-time trainers behind me.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that anymore once you get into the professional rank. Everybody else has that too. And you can see that their talent level wasn't quite there. And it's painful to watch because this kid who's just been given everything to him his whole life will turn pro, and now he's 25th. And if he doesn't improve quickly in 2 years, everything will be taken away from him.
It's so interesting. I work in a university environment with some of the best musicians in the world, and it's so interesting when you throw them all into the same fish tank. It's they're all zero, and you might be the number one musician artist coming out of your small town or even your city, your state, whatever. But you then come to this university context where everybody is the same. You're just a number. And for the first time, it's so interesting to observe these freshmen experience indifference for the very first time. And it breaks some of them.
Exactly. And it's the ones who can push through that who have a real shot.
Yeah.
And you can see that a lot in what's happening with these kids that are turning pro. I mean, they're 17, 18 years old. It's when I was racing, you needed to be pro by 16, 17. I was 17 years old and I was late.
Okay.
That's changed a bit. They're like 18, 19, 20 years old turning pro, which to me is crazy because that's not how the sport was when I was in it. I think that's good. I think pushing kids at such a young age is hard.
Yeah.
But seeing them turn pro, well, now there's 30 guys who are all as fast as me.
Right.
Do they let it crumble them and they can't get past it, or do they thrive off of it and say, okay, well, what's next? What are they doing better than me?
Yeah, especially after you've invested 15 years into the sport, and then to just then have your shot, and then you're 26th. Like that sucks.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow.
Like, did you in your community group, as you know, you probably knew all the different riders, and you went to all the different races and stuff like that. Like, did you see a lot of people just under the pressure in your peer group just crumble after a certain point with the pressure from sponsorships or parents or just the money backing them? Or was there, there's the pressure to compete and win and not die and like be athletic and train and like, but then there's that external pressure that we've been talking about, and like from an emotional standpoint, that could just kill you.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and it's draining is the problem. So you have all of this pressure of, I have to perform at this race. I have to go do well because it's such a cutthroat. you're as good as your last race type of sport. And what for a long time, what I struggled with was letting that completely deplete me before the race even started.
Okay.
The nerves and the pressure. I wasn't eating right because I was sick to my stomach. I was so nervous. So by the time you get out in the race, you're drained before you even get out there.
Right.
And it took me a while to get over that. And
it's like the pro wrestlers who do the sweat boxes beforehand to meet weight, and then they enter the ring and they're just depleted because they just sweated off 8 pounds of water.
yeah, exactly. So in order to go do what we do, it takes you're burning so many calories out there. And if you wake up, it's race day, and I'm not too hungry, I'll just eat an egg, just something to hold me over. And then I would go the whole day without eating because I just wasn't hungry. I had to start forcing myself to eat. Because
right.
it took me long enough. I figured out, hey, I have no energy because I'm not eating anything. My dad was the one who figured it out and who started telling me, like, you have to eat. And we started forcing myself to eat.
This is part of the sport, man. You just got to eat.
And I eventually got over that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so hard. I wasn't forcing myself anymore.
Okay.
And that was probably at like 11, 12 years old is when I was learning this.
Dang.
The pressure, it's crazy. So yes, people crumble under the pressure. There's even people that I race against now. I can go at a regional qualifier race and they might get a good start and beat me. And the same people that beat me this year at a regional qualifier, I just went out and my best race was a third. There was a guy who beat me. His best race was a 33rd.
Wow.
So it
can be that dramatic.
Yeah, when you're racing against the 42 fastest guys in the country, it's not a huge difference from the top to the bottom, but I know these guys have the speed. I race against them all year long. Then we line up at the national where this is what we've all been
psychological and emotional, like, oh my gosh.
And they're 25th, 28th, 33rd, and it just blows my mind to see people not perform to where I can see it. I see where they should be, and they just can't do it. And I'm in process of trying to teach my kids that.
Yeah,
because pressure can come with anything.
Sure,
it could come with providing for your family. It could come with that next opportunity at my electrical job. It could come with playing baseball. So I try to teach them the hard work. You put in the work in whatever you're doing. And just be confident that because of the work you put in, you're going to go do the best that you can. You're not going to go win. You might go win.
Yeah.
You're not going to go be the absolute best, but you're going to go be the best that you can for the work that you put in. Whether that be 1st, 5th, 20th, whether that means you're going to All-Stars in Little League.
Right.
Or you're the 5th best kid on the team. So that's something that I'm really trying to show my kids when they come and watch me race. And I pointed out to them, like, remember that guy that beat me 3 weeks ago when we were in Michigan? He just got 33rd. And just open their eyes to see what letting pressure can do to you.
Right. So hard work. I want to focus on that for a second, because you started going into your passion and having to work really hard at 4 years old. Like, and so my mind makes up a narrative saying that, like, where did you learn hard work? Like, I was still forming words at 4 years old. And so the concept of hard work is something that I can experience, but is it a lesson that I can actually learn externally from my father or my family or my environment? But it sounds like, is it nature, nurture, or like bottling up that hard work? And I guess my question is, like, how did you learn about hard work?
I think that it was a combination of seeing it from my dad. My dad obviously worked extremely hard.
Yeah.
As an electrician, to be able to provide for what we were doing. He was gone before I'd wake up in the morning. Sometimes he'd get back when I was already asleep. He's working Saturdays, he's working Sundays, he's doing everything he could.
Right.
Coming home dirty, sweaty, sunburnt. And so seeing that,
Hmm.
and my parents not hiding it from me, not
Yeah.
hiding that, hey, in order for us to do this, it's going to take sacrifice. It takes this hard work. My mom worked as well. So, I mean, my mom didn't have to work with the money my dad was making, but I was taking all that.
Mm.
So, them kind of showing me and explaining to me that things aren't free and seeing him work hard for it. That was one. And number two is you get your butt kicked enough times
Yeah.
and you
The
don't.
determination of
Yeah.
like, I want to win.
Yeah. I did not like losing. So just seeing what hard work can do and then putting it into practice. And my dad allowing me, my dad also pushing me.
Yeah.
You know, if he's going to put that much money and effort into it, there was a good amount of pushing and pressure from my
Gonna
dad.
make it worth it here, son. Let's
Yeah,
go.
it was, the way he put it was, I'm all in if you're all in.
Mm.
And if you're not all in, that's fine. But we can go have nice vacations.
Right.
That was literally the things that he would tell me as we were growing up. And
They're all yeah, there are alternatives to this lifestyle.
we
We're
could
going to
be,
Mexico, baby.
we could be doing other things other than racing your dirt bike out here. So then I always had the opportunity to stop.
Okay.
But if my dad was going to continue to be all in, then I had to be all in. There was no other option.
Right.
So that starts the hard work, starts teaching you, well, I got to work hard as he's working. Otherwise, he's not going to help me and continue supporting me.
Right.
And then as you get older, so that teaches the hard work. And then as you get older, you've now seen the benefits of the hard work.
Yeah. How do you think that's translated into your professional life?
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
It's game changing, huge, which is why I feel sports, whether my kids are going to pursue professional career or not in sports, it's a way that I know how to teach it, and I want to use it to teach it. Both my kids play baseball. I'm not going to force them to do something they don't like.
Sure.
Neither of them have shown any kind of interest on the level that I did for motorcycles. So I'm not going to push them into this crazy sport that breaks bones. But they like baseball, so we go play baseball, and I use it. I teach them in the off season. It's like, yeah, all the kids practice baseball during spring and fall. But you know how to get a leg up on them? Let's practice in winter and summer.
That's right.
So if they are better than you, we can close that gap in the off season, and then you'll both progress together, and then we can close that gap in the off season again, and use the sport to teach that hard work equals results. There's no option other than results from the hard work. And as I went into full-time, like being an electrician full-time, I went into the electrical union in California.
Okay.
And me being extremely competitive, I wanted to be the best.
Come on.
This is what the sport of motocross has taught me. So I graduated my 5-year apprenticeship with a 95% grade point average at the top of my class. And through the 5-year apprenticeship in what they consider, what's the word I'm looking for? It's full-time employment, but you're consistent. You're always moving around from company to company. When your job is done, you jump to the next contractor that has a big job. That's the way the union is supposed to work.
Right.
Since I started working full-time at 21 years old, I have never been laid off or fired or asked to go to work for another company.
Okay.
And that's all from the hard work that was put into me to pursue my motocross dream. And it's gotten me to the point now where we're now here in Tennessee. I moved here, and within a 3-year period, I went from, man, I don't have a job, to where I'm now the director of the contract division of the company that I work for. And it's there, to me, there's no secret recipe. It's the work that I put in equals the results that I get out.
Now, specifically, hard work could could mean a broad range of things. Do you have a few elements that you would include with hard work? Would that be, getting up early or staying late or refining your craft or how does Jeff disseminate down into like what are the elements of hard work?
It changes with the stage that I'm in. So obviously
Yeah.
through the apprenticeship, the hard work is the studying, the finishing the schoolwork. It's being prepared for the tests that I have to take.
Yeah. Yep.
Hard work is I wake up every morning and I'm at work every morning. I'm there till the end of the day. And something that I've that is really hard on me because motocross, it didn't matter what was wrong with me in motocross. If I had a race, I was going to be there.
Okay.
It doesn't matter how sick I am,
Okay, I was gonna ask, does that mean
how hurt,
illness,
yeah,
broken,
sick,
battered?
hurt. If I could get on the motorcycle, I was there. I've had to pick up my left hand and put it on the handlebar with my right hand because I couldn't get my arm up there. And I went and I
Oh my
raced.
gosh.
So that's my level of commitment of I could still do this.
Right. I'm
So
gonna show up, and
I'm
when I show up, I'm going all out.
yeah, I'm there. So now in my work life, a little cold, I wake up in the morning and ask, would I race a motorcycle today?
Mm.
The answer 99.9% of the time is yes. So I don't ever miss work, unscheduled.
Sure.
I'll take my vacation days.
Sure.
But I'm always there. I'm always there on time. On time is late. 15 minutes early is on time.
Mm-hmm.
And just being fully committed to what I'm doing. The project that I was over here running at a ASC tobacco plant was a massive multi-million-dollar project, and I take ownership for it. I'm there all the time. It's hard work, but just being there in it and taking ownership of it.
Yeah. How do you, even within motocross, like how do you keep from being just a workaholic with unhealthy boundaries or is that a thing? Maybe the whole sport is just an unhealthy boundary. But like even in like taking what you've learned from your professional athletic pursuits, and does that translate into your work environment in a healthy way or an unhealthy way?
I think that my mindset could be very unhealthy.
Okay.
It could go that way, but I have my wife who keeps me very well grounded.
Wives do that. They're the best.
Yeah. And really my relationship with God and understanding the order of importance of things as well. So, I'm first a Christian follower of God. I'm a husband.
Yeah.
I'm a dad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an electrician.
Okay. Order of operations.
Yeah. And then I'm a motocross racer because my income comes from being an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that and really trying to follow that model of being godly, following Jesus, and not following my own fleshly desires.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I work this much more, we could have a pool. Or
Sure.
so there's that's what I focus on, is making sure that I'm not doing it solely for fleshly desires.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the work and the result that comes from it in anything I do. That's kind of what I've become addicted to, is or the results that come from the work.
Right.
My latest thing is golf.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing
taking on another sport.
Yeah,
You can be a pro golfer here in a year too.
here in a couple of years, right? And what I'm addicted to that I think really helps me in the work life is seeing the results that come from the work. And just once you start to get a taste of it, that it can get addicting. So trying to not let it take over my life. I mean, I've been married for 13 years now. So in the beginning, yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
People would ask me for help. I can go make money on the side, this, that. It took a lot of work to have a healthy balance.
Sure. aspiration, wanting to do better, the constant push and drive, and it's like it's such an honorable good thing. And especially here in the West, we say, we admire and admonish ambition, and we're like, yes. And then we also criticize workaholicism, and so there's like this dual tension thing that's out there. But it's like, no, to make it far in your field, it does require hard work. It does require you to get up early. It requires you to work when you're tired. It requires you to be communicative and take on those challenges and learn new skills. And it's like, but there's also that balance of, like you just said, of saying no and saying, like, yes, this is enough. I am content with either income or status or professionalism or whatever. And like, I'm just going to sit here for a moment and not deplete every other aspect of my life just to get a little bit more. Finding that balance that's a hard pursuit in of itself.
Yeah, it really is. And like I said, it took years of trying to figure out the healthy balance. Having kids really helped, wanting to be there for my kids, and not just work so that they could grow up.
Sure.
Like, I want to be here with my kids. They're only going to be this age once, and I want to make sure that when they want to go camping with dad, that I'm going camping.
Yeah.
Not, hey, well, I got all this money now that you're 25, you want to go camping?
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't want to go camping. I didn't put the time in with them when they were younger. Why would they want to all of a sudden be with me now? So hopefully that translates to them wanting to hang out with me when they're 25, 30 years old.
That's what my dad has actually said. The definition of success for parenting is that once they're adults, they actually want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And that's what I hope comes from it. But I know right now, they like to hang out with me.
Yeah.
And I want to be there.
Come on.
So finding the balance. Another thing that I have found, that if you're committed to what you're doing during work hours, that it doesn't take a whole lot more. There's a lot of people out there who want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of money.
You see them every day. Yep.
So for me to compete against them, everything's a competition to me. So my workforce is competition. The electricians in Clarksville are my competition.
How fast can you do up a panel? How many managers can I talk to? How many job sites can I go manage? Yeah. Like, it's all up there.
So in order for me to compete against them, if I'm fully committed to what I'm doing while it's work hours, I see that it's enough.
Yeah.
And I've just recently been moved to this new position, and we'll see how it goes. You gotta
learn how to compete at this new level.
Yeah, I gotta learn how to compete at this new level. So it'll be a new learning curve. I think that I'll probably be a little busier for a bit until I get it figured out. But once I get it figured out, I'm gonna figure out how to get my job done during business hours.
Yep.
And if everyone else wants to work at 8:00 at night and send me emails, I'm sorry.
That's their problem. Yeah, I'll answer that in the morning
from 6 to 3.
Yep.
And they'll figure that out. I'll email them right back at 6 o'clock in the morning. New
bosses in town, different hours.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'm hoping to be able to get back on that program here quickly, adapt to the new job, figure it out, and just learn how to be there, be present, and get it done during business hours.
Mm-hmm. I have an intriguing question for myself of how did Christianity show up for you on the racetrack? Because my limited exposure to a few different professional fields is, especially in the realm of athleticism and competition and things like that, like that can really beat the faith out of you. Like, it could be an environment where it's not endorsed a whole lot. Like, why would you even distract yourself? Like, and you can't even make it on Sunday because we're traveling or racing or like, it doesn't matter. Like, how did that show up for you?
We started going to church regularly when I was 9 and had a broken femur.
Well, you didn't have anywhere else to be.
Yeah, there was nowhere else to be, right? And that's when I remember starting to go regularly. And it really stuck 9, 10, 11 through junior high. I was going to youth group, but as I got older and the motocross took more time, I was racing 50 weekends out of the year, about maybe 48.
Wow.
So really I could
All
go
different locations.
different
Oh my
locations all the time.
gosh.
So Sundays, a lot of the races were on Sundays. So I would go to youth group on Wednesday nights. And as I got older, turned pro, I really didn't have time for it.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to go to church. I didn't have time. I was busy chasing my own desires. And my whole, I've been Christian since I was a teenager. Like I gave my life to God as a teenager, and I don't feel I ever walked away or didn't believe. I've believed in Jesus ever since that. But I walked away from the practice, from listening, from reading, from I was I'm a Christian, but I don't need to go to church type of guy. And my whole life growing up from 13 on, I remember always praying, am I supposed to be racing a dirt bike? Asking God for direction.
Right. Yeah.
But there's a but.
There's a but.
If the answer was no, I was in no place to listen to that answer. My reason for the question was a selfish, I want to hear yes to have more confidence on the motocross track.
God has told me to race.
Yes, that is why I was asking, hoping to hear yes.
Interesting.
And to have more confidence on the track and just continue winning races. And I never heard an answer. So I just kept racing.
Why not?
Yeah, kept racing. I mean, I was, as an amateur in the United States, I was one of the top 3 to 5 amateurs in the United States my whole life. And I was making money from Monster Energy. I was making money from Maxxis tires, from Answer gear at 14, 15, 16 years old.
Wow.
The type of money that I can make now at 36, I was making at 16 years old.
Oh my gosh. And all that was just being pumped right back into the motocross machine.
Straight back into it, all through endorsements, because you couldn't make money at a race. So the way that it worked was endorsements, and they would pay me based on results as a contingency program. So it wasn't getting cash, a purse for the race, because that's professional. So there's loopholes around it. And
there always are.
Yeah. So if I raced 48 weekends out of the year and I got Monster Energy was paying me $300 for a win, Maxxis Tires was paying me $500 for a win, and Answer Gear was paying me $500 for a win.
Wow.
And I would race 4 to 6 classes a weekend, and I could win almost every single time.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and so to be 16 years old doing that, I figured this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Turn pro, and it's a rude awakening to go from I'm amateur pro to I'm now racing with the best guys in the world at this. And at the same time, the economy crashed.
Right. So not only do you become a small fish in a big pond, and it's much harder to win, you had the economy in 2009, 2008, 2009?
I turned pro at Supercross in 2009.
Okay.
And then in 2010, everything tanked. And if the economy crashes and you don't have money for groceries and bills, the toys are going to go. Like all the motorcycles, people weren't buying motorcycles, people weren't buying gear, people weren't doing those kinds of activities because they were barely scraping by.
Right.
And
mortgages still have to be paid.
Right. So the money in the sport was just gone. And as I turned pro, I could go out and beat guys who were making really good money as professional racers, but I couldn't get help. And I eventually went up and I asked a question to somebody at the Kawasaki semi. And I asked them, what am I doing wrong when I can beat your guys that are underneath this tent at the semi, but I can't get any help? And they told me that we've put millions of dollars into building his name, and
Can't go
nobody
back.
knows who you are.
Oh gosh, it became just a popularity contest.
That's all it was. They didn't have the money to
Oh,
build new riders, new names up, because these other people, they had spent millions of dollars building them. So they just stayed with them. It didn't matter that I was beating the people that I was beating. And that was really hard to hear.
that is so interesting that it actually that what it reminds me of is in the social media influencer world where huge multi-million-dollar brands are built upon a single person or a single name where this person started a YouTube channel or whatever and they have built this massive brand but it's under them and then they've built a team and then eventually they say okay, I'm going to step down from this or I'm not going to be the head of the show and then the brand just tanks because the name is the brand and it's just like it's not transferable, it's not sustainable. It's just like, oh my gosh, and to hear that that's applicable in other professional fields is like that's terrifying.
Yeah. So I was 18, 19 years old, traveling the country. Me and my brother were traveling the country. He was being my mechanic at the time and putting in all that work. I mean, we were gone for 8 months out of the year, traveling in a trailer,
Dang.
trying to find places to ride, trying to find places to work out. And I'm out here beating these guys that are making $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year racing dirt bikes.
Yeah.
And I was buying my motorcycle. All sponsorship went away. I was no longer getting paid to ride a Honda. I had to buy a Honda. I couldn't get tires. Max's Tires wasn't paying me to use their tires. I was buying tires. All the money went out of the sport.
It flipped.
So I went from being this like top of the country guy to being, now you're riding around here in like 15th, 16th. And I had no money. I didn't have the money. It was purse money that was getting me from race to race. My bike had a little bit of stuff in it. I'm racing against guys whose bikes are worth $200,000-$300,000. The suspension alone on it is $50,000.
Oh my gosh.
My bike wasn't $50,000. My bike wasn't $20,000. And I'm out here competing with these guys, and I just couldn't get the help. So it took me into angry. Nothing was good enough.
Yeah.
Always upset. Didn't matter what place I got, it wasn't good enough. I was upset. I was angry. Wasn't having fun. Started drinking and hanging out with the wrong people, and just went on this downward spiral. Really.
Yeah.
Because I mean, what do you do?
You're at the top of your game and you're not being recognized for it and everything's batting against you and you're like, it should be working. It was working. What happened?
Yeah. And
golly.
to have it all just like felt like it was just pulled out from underneath me. It was hard to deal with. So I got in with the wrong group of people.
Yep.
And it was, well, I'm out here, I'm going to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the results started to go down. They weren't getting better doing stuff like that. I'll tell you that.
Those hard work principles that we just discussed, they weren't really applying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They weren't. So, I ended up back at my church that I used to go to back in California.
Good circle back. Thank you.
Yeah. And as I was back, hungover on a Sunday, and I was done.
Yeah.
And I said, God, I need to know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because I'm not having fun anymore. And then but then with the prayer this time, it was, if I'm not supposed to do this, I need you to take this away. Like the desire, I need you to take the desire away because I'm not strong enough.
Yeah.
So now I really want to know, like, what am I supposed to be doing? I didn't ride a dirt bike for over a year after that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
For your lifestyle, that's insane.
Yeah. That's probably the longest to this day that I've ever gone not riding a motorcycle.
And that's with all the injuries included. And I know you broke your back at one point.
Yeah.
And numerous issues and muscular things and tendons and all. And that was the longest period.
Yep. That was the longest period since I've been 4 years old that I've gone without riding a motorcycle, was after I prayed that. So I prayed that, shortly after, one of my friends I hadn't talked to in a while called me, asked me to go to the Harvest Crusade in Anaheim that exact
Yeah.
same day. So I'm like, well, I better go. Like, I just prayed asking for some help, and now I'm
This
getting,
is the answer. Let's
yeah,
go.
let's go. I was supposed to go drinking with some friends that night,
Uh-huh.
and instead I went. I said yes, and I went to the Harvest Crusade, and recommitted my life, and was able to stop. I got off of the vicious cycle of doing what I thought I loved, but hating it while I was doing it because
Right.
it wasn't fulfilling what I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really the start of me getting away from the sport as a full-time passion, full-time job.
Right. Okay. So you've been doing this for 30 years at this point. And
32.
32. I mean, not that we're accounting exactly, but how many months?
Yeah, right.
32 years, and you still have great passion, and you're still competing. I mean, you literally just competed a couple of weeks ago, saw the results. You did really well. Not number one,
Not
but
number
still
one.
really well.
Yeah.
And you made it out alive. Like, I don't know that you have any huge injury from that. Maybe a little sore, but not any huge injury. But like, where is Jeff Loop going from here? What do you think the next 5 years of racing or career or the intermingling of the two, like, what does that look like for you?
Man, really, it could go so many different directions.
Yeah.
You know, constantly trying to be in step with what God has for me, that could take me to pastoring a church. It could take me to pastoring a whole bunch of kids at the motocross track. Who knows?
Okay.
Which way would I like it to go? I mean, I would love.
Is there a both?
Yeah, right. Can I have both?
Can we be in church on a motocross track?
Exactly, right. And that's the direction I would love for it to go. To where I can try to instill some of these same values that motocross has given me.
Yeah.
Into a younger generation, because it could be taken the complete opposite direction, and I've seen it taken the opposite direction where motocross is your life. It doesn't matter what the kid is doing, how the kid is behaving. Kid might not even be going to school. It becomes life.
At some point that breaks.
Exactly.
And
if you're not in the 99.999% of the best in the world, you're not going to do this for a living. So to bank your whole life on it, it's hard to see what happens more often than not. One injury, one bad injury could take somebody who was supposed to make it and end it.
Golly. Hey, my wife and I use this phrase all the time called just high stakes. Such a high stakes situation, and we try and do as much as we possibly can to have as few of those as possible. Because it's just like, man, when we're in that, fight or flight or it all, bet the whole farm type scenarios, it's stressful.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of stress. And the kid probably doesn't realize it till they're 16, 17, ready to turn pro. And at that age, they're like, this has to work.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work, I haven't been to school since I was 7 years old. I have nothing. That pressure's got to be so hard. And there's been programs that have started up that I really like. There's a program called On Track School, which I love that they have.
That's a brilliant idea.
And it's a organized homeschool group for athletes. It's not just motocross. There's people that come from all kinds of different sports, and it's a full.
That's brilliant.
Organized homeschool group.
Yeah.
And they have prom and they have graduation. The graduation for the motocrossers in this is at Loretta's every year.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it's super cool, and I love seeing it because it's
just the support and the community, and just get it to let the kids and the families know that it's survivable.
Yeah, and it's very encouraging to see that it's less often that the kids are not going to school and having a backup plan. It was very common when I was racing. I mean, I begged for it because all the kids I raced, they didn't go to school.
Right.
But my mom was director of teachers education for the Claremont colleges.
You weren't getting away with that.
I wasn't getting away from it. And I thank my parents now for not doing that, obviously. Man, I went off on a tangent.
You're fine. You're fine. We were talking about like 5-year plan, or like where do you
Yeah,
end
that's right.
up from here?
So I would love to use my passion to instill the work ethic and all of the good attributes, and get get other kids to see that it's not just a win or die sport. There's so much more to it, and to not put your value in what place you just got.
Right.
And I would love to have a compound where I could teach kids how to be fast, because yeah, it's a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Teach the skills, teach them the work ethic, teach them the working out on and off the bike, and but then also teach them how to work on their bikes, because we got to go ride the next day.
Right.
Teach them how to change an air filter, teach them how to repair an engine, how to change a tire. I had to do all that with my dad. We didn't have the money to pay someone else to do it.
You
And
had to be resourceful and
yeah,
scrappy and
yeah.
mechanically inclined and
Yep. I was rebuilding 2-stroke engines at 12. I was rebuilding 4-stroke engines at 14 years old.
wow.
So just I would love to teach that,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully steer some kids in the right direction.
Yeah.
And in doing that, incorporating God into it. There's a guy, Trey Kennard, who raced Supercross, and he's really good. He's incorporating God into almost every time you see him talking. He's talking about it,
That's cool.
and I love to see it. And he's someone who did make it. He was the top of the top, and he had it all taken away in a matter of like 2 crashes in 2 separate years.
Oh man.
And broke his back in a whole bunch of places, and then broke his femur the next year, and it was over. But he still is so passionate for God, and I love seeing that. So if I could end up in a place where I own a compound and I can teach kids motocross and incorporate God into it, man, have my wife lead worship
Yeah.
on a Saturday morning, and then we go ride all day, and then we work on dirt bikes, and then have a sermon at night, and then wake up and do it all again on Sunday. Like,
That's dreamland right there.
it'd be cool.
When it happens, we'll have to do an interview out there and be like, "It's here. This is
Yeah.
what it looks like. These are all the components, and it's
Here it is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Could you speak for a moment to the parental perspective of you were the young child athlete who was just like all in, all passion, and that's all you were just motocross, like you were that was just your thing. And now you have sons. And speaking to parents that have really passionate, ambitious children that want to go pro or want to go to the highest levels in their field, like how do you handle that and guide that as a parent to where you want some balance? Your mom was very, very smart in making sure that you had an education, and your dad was like, well, you're going to do this. Okay, I'm going to be all in with you, but we're going to work really freaking hard to, on the electrical side of things, to make sure that that this costs something.
Yeah.
It's not just all given to you. Like, do you have any word for a parent who sees that potential in a son or a daughter, and how to maybe exploit's not the right word, but how to like nurture that correctly, and so that it can be a gift and not the thing that destroys them at 16, 18, 25?
Yeah. I think one of the most important things that my parents did was that motocross was always a privilege. I had to earn it. If my grades weren't good, I wasn't going riding. If I talked back to my parents, I wasn't going riding.
Okay. It wasn't just the given. There was this, hey, you do this, which is required of you. You get this result, which is what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And there was times where I didn't get to go to a race that I wanted to go to. Like, and they really held up to their end of it. It wasn't just a scare tactic. If I started venturing the wrong way, it was, all right, then we're done racing.
Okay.
And that really kept me on the right track. If you have a child who is that passionate for something, it's
Mm-hmm.
very strong. It's a very strong tool.
It's their drug. It's their
Right.
high. It's the obsession that they can't get rid of.
Right. So you can either just give it to your kid, no matter how they're acting,
Mm.
how they treat people, how their grades are. That's the direction that their life is going to go. They're going to figure that they're going to expect that everything is given to them.
Right.
My parents really put it in me that I had to work in order to do the things that I loved that took all of this money. And that grew and grew as I got into 13, 14 years old. I started working literally with my dad. So now you got to go to work to help make the money.
Right.
I was 14, 15. I had to get the grades. Even though I was homeschooling, I still had to have good grades.
To knock all those conspiracy theories
Yeah.
out there, like homeschoolers still require
Yeah.
grades, and you have tests, and
Yeah.
mom and dad
had
aren't
to
just
keep
letting things slide.
Right. I had to keep up with my schoolwork. I had to treat people right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be taken away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very strong tool if you do have a kid with that kind of passion. And then another thing that it took my dad a long time to figure out, and I kept telling him as a kid, when I didn't do well, I was more angry than my dad. If you are that passionate
Mm-hmm.
for it, whether it be baseball, gymnastics, motocross, when I would lose, there was nobody more upset about it than me.
Right.
So my dad coming in and throwing tools and helmets and gear and yelling at me didn't help. It didn't make me want to go win more. That was already there.
Mm.
With the passion, when you have a kid that's that passionate for something, that's already there. By the time I was maybe 14, 15 is when my dad really figured it out. And he would come in level headed. What happened? Something happened to cause that result. As you start to get into that kind of a relationship, you can start being more truthful about it.
Right. You can actually, it's safe.
Yeah.
You can actually have a conversation about, like, hey, when there's high passion or high obsession, there's also high conviction.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what you did, or
Yeah.
you know where it went wrong, or to have someone in just come in and bash you isn't we're not bonding and coming up with a solution to go from here.
Right. The kid is gonna. I would come up with excuses. Oh well, this happened, or oh my brakes went out, or oh there was some reason for that result, and that wasn't me. I couldn't tell him that because he was already so angry.
Mm-hmm.
But once he figured it out, and we started to have a more safe area to talk, I could come off the track, and he'd say, "What happened?" And I could say, "I choked. I could not figure the track out."
Right.
We could sit down and talk about it. Okay, well, this is what I saw. I saw you were struggling in this part of the track. You were fast on that side of the track, but over here you were struggling. Or he could start to trust me when I'd say the bike is not running right. When we're being honest with each
Mm-hmm.
other, he could then trust me and go find what was wrong with the bike.
Mm-hmm.
But if every time I have a bad race, there's something wrong with the bike, it's the boy who cries wolf.
Right.
It got to the point when I was 16, 17, 18 years old where we had this relationship with each other that we were both on the same page and we could attack it and figure it out.
That's really cool. I mean, that feels like something. I mean, we're talking about, parent to child or something like that. Like, what a beautiful thing to be able to create that honest dialogue between where parents are safe and you can actually be like, hey, this went bad. I know I have responsibilities and I have this and I have this. I mean, age appropriate, of course, but like to have that level of directness where we don't have to lie, we don't have to blame, and we can actually take personal responsibility. I mean, dude, that's just something that'll stick with you through every career and relationship that'll just pay dividend upon dividend.
Yeah. And it was huge. And the result that came of it was it was huge because I could come off the track and tell him I'm struggling in my corners. And then he said, well, let's figure it out. Let's check the sag on your bike. Let's change the fork height of your bike. Let's do something to fix it. And we could fix it. But like I said, at 8, 9 years old, when helmets were flying, I was never could say something like that. It was never my fault. It was the bike, just realizing that your kid wants it more than you want it for your kid when they're that passionate.
Mm-hmm.
If you're forcing your kid to go race dirt bikes or play baseball, well, you might be different.
I was going to ask on the inverse of that, what is the opposite experience where mom and dad is way more passionate than child. I'm sure you've seen that, where you have an adult that is just like, my kid is going to do this, and then the child is just like, eh.
Yeah, you see that. I can only speak to what I see in that because I wasn't that kid.
Yeah.
That wasn't the life I grew up in, but I had seen it countless times. It always leads to the kid completely hating the sport
Mm-hmm.
and not liking their parents.
Just brokenness,
Yeah.
just a trail of brokenness of, yeah, dreams and feelings and relationships. It's ugly.
Yeah. I hated seeing it, and I still see it with when I go ride today. Kids that are out there because their parents are wanting them and they're yelling and screaming,
Mm-hmm.
and just knowing by seeing it for 30 years, seeing where it's most likely going to take them unless the parents can see it and do something about it before it's too late.
Right.
It definitely it'll turn to the kid resenting the sport and the parents more often than not.
That's good, man. Jeff, you have exposed me to a world that I know very little about, and I feel just a tiny bit more educated on, but I'm in awe of the experience from an extraordinarily young age, 4 years old, to where you are now. You have stuck with something for 32 years. Like, to see that in any hobby or professionalism or career, or that's incredible. And I just like I'm sitting here like, man, what does it look like if I have something, whether it's this podcast or something else, and I stick with it for 3 decades? What kind of results and what kind of maturity will that produce in me? And that's just really fantastic. I am really into the narrative that you have around passion and around this obsession of your sport. But really what has intrigued me in this conversation is how there are these similar strings through your entire life, that some of it has to do with your writing, some of it has to do with your electrical career, but it's really a statement to who you are as a person. And to me, like, in these different conversations that I've been able to have and facilitate this, those are the things that intrigue me the most, because it speaks to legacy and about the character of people, and how I don't want to say necessarily that people don't change, but what I want to say is that who someone is kind of sticks with them throughout their entire life. And what I can see, like, in you is this really dedicated person who, when you get an idea in your head, you're like, I'm all in. And I'm going to do that with other people. And like, you were able to do that with your dad, and you were able to do it, this whole family culture then shifted into this, we're going to do this together. And so there's this togetherness that I see in you, and just, the external things that I know about you and how you are involved in, this group and this community, and like that string narrative of who you are and how your life has continued to progress it's the same thing that started 30 years ago. And to me, it's like, okay, Jonathan, what are things that I'm putting in place in my life now? What are things that have been put in place in my life for the last, 20, 30 years that are going to continue, or things that I can start? And I'm really in awe of how, to me, it feels very obvious in your narrative, those few different things that I picked up on. Jeff, is there anything that you would tell your younger self to enjoy your process, your journey more, or to experience it more fully? Or is there anything that you think would have been helpful to hear as a young person to just experience the fullness that your life has already been?
I really see the value in the life that I've lived, in all of it. I think that if there was anything that I could have told myself, was to enjoy all of it a little more, but not in a way to change any of it. I believe that I learned some hard lessons the hard way that have helped mold me into the man and husband that I am now. I believe that I learned some hard lessons a really fun way through racing dirt bikes that have molded me into the man I am now. And I really could say that I don't regret it. I don't regret not making it in my eyes to the level in motocross that I wanted to. I don't regret it. I don't regret all the time I put into it, even though I didn't make it. I don't regret walking away from it and joining the electrical trade. I don't regret the stupid year and a half that I had. Was it stupid? Yeah. In my eyes, it is part of the picture that God is painting right in front of me. And to be able to live that with my wife and my kids and be able to look back at all of it and say that is pretty cool.
Jeff, my friend, it has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation today, to hear your journey from an extraordinarily young age and through injury and through huge success and lows, and how it's gone from, okay, I'm going to be a professional in this sport, to I'm a professional in this electrical field, to moving to being a husband and a father and trying to instill these values that I learned as a young person into my children of dedication and hard work, and just show up and be who you are. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show today and sharing your story. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation. So I just want to turn it over to you for one last time and just say, Jeff, thank you for being here. And if people wanted to follow along on your motocross journey, or just wanted to get some more insight of, a video or whatever, what you've done and who you are, is there a place that people can find you if they wanted to follow along in your journey?
Yeah, I'm not super big on social media, but I am on Instagram at 2tall229, and I have a Facebook, Jeff Loop. Other than that, you can go on YouTube. There's a lot of videos of me riding on YouTube.
I did go and look at a few before this interview, and I was like, Jeff, that was a big jump.
Yeah. So there's been a good handful of those, mate. So you can check me out on YouTube and follow me on Instagram.
Dude, that is so awesome. If you guys want to see good racing, look up Jeff on YouTube and you'll be in for a treat. Thank you so much for being on the show today, my friend.
Thank you.